All right, guys, welcome back to the MyMarketer Show. My name is Danny Decker. I'm your host today. I'm the co-founder of MyMarketer, and we have a really great guest here. This is somebody I've known for a long time and has a lot of great insight to share around sales and sales leadership. So, Jon Ray, welcome to the show. It's good to have you here. Jon is the Chief Revenue Officer and Partner at Revenuify. I think I got that right, Revenuify. So, Jon, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks, Danny. Great to be here. Good to be with you again.
Did I pronounce it right?
Yeah, it's Revenuify. Yep.
Nice. Awesome. All right. So Jon, you and I have known each other for quite a while. Much of our audience is probably meeting you for the first time. So let's start here. Just talk a little bit about sort of your professional journey. You've had some really awesome career experience, and let's just start but kind of talk us through what led you to where you are today.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a long journey for sure. And, I started out way back in the day doing some expediting warehouse type work and worked my way into the office world and happened to just kind of roll into sales and really just loved that aspect and spent a number of years in project management where I was also responsible for sales, but didn't really love the project management part so much, but loved the sales part of it. And so that's kind of the trajectory I took in my career and ended up in sales management and national sales management. And then took a little while and was in a role as a CEO for a manufacturing automation company for a number of years and was able to help grow that business and build a leadership team. And that's where I think you and I connected back in that time. And you guys were just amazing to help me with the marketing side of things and lead generation and some things like that. And so, and then I left that role and stepped into a private equity-backed integration company in the commercial integration world as a chief revenue officer. They were doing a lot more revenue than the company I was CEO at. So spent some time there and just, again, helping to try to grow that organization and reach those levels that the PE group was after from a enterprise value standpoint. And that's where I came across Revenuify. And, I just, I've always loved being able to help clients and really impact their business and help them, tackle problems, resolve those issues, grow their organization, build a great team. And that's really what Revenuify does. And, there's a lot of sales training out there. We're a sales training, coaching, outsourced sales management, consulting company. And there's a lot of those out there. But what makes us a little bit unique and what I loved about it and why I made the decision to join as a partner is that, we're not one of those companies that just takes sales training for 3 days, a week, whatever that might be, and hands somebody a playbook and says, all right, good luck. We really dig in deep. And so most of our engagements are really around 6-month, 12-month engagements where we're taking the principles that we lay out in those first few trainings and then digging deep and using real clients and real scenarios to apply the methodology to that salesperson's business and territory. And so loving being able just to help and impact a lot of different clients across a few different industries and really dig in deep. And what's fun about it is because we go so deep, I just get to know their business and we end up talking about marketing and, the common issues that everybody tends to have with that side of the business as well. So, I focus mainly on IT commercial integration and manufacturing and automation, but we, help any B2B really kind of focus more on complex sales as well. So that's been the journey. And, so that's what's brought us here today.
Love it. I love what you're doing with Revenuify for a variety of reasons, but one of which is, ever since I've known you, I've always felt like you have a gift for relationships and you're such a natural relationship builder. And culture builder. So I love the opportunity for you to get to really work hands-on with business owners and leaders. I know you launched the business a couple years ago, like relatively recently, and I love it for you. I think you're really going to do great things there. So that's exciting. And do talk a little bit, for a business owner that is, in the process of growing, trying to figure out sales, like what does it actually look like to engage with you and kind of how does that process typically start?
Yeah, no, great question. So the way we really always start the process is mainly talking with the business owners and executive leaders, and we really try to focus around their business objectives that they're trying to accomplish over the next, near term and long term, right? So whether it's next 12 months, next 3 to 5 years, obviously there's a lot of differences in there. There's owners who are thinking about an exit, in a certain period of time. There's some that are just like, hey, this is a lifestyle business, and I just want to have some, mild, continuous growth over a number of years. And so it really starts with us being aligned with the business objectives of that owner, that executive leadership team, and then from there, determining, how can we, from a sales revenue generation standpoint, help them achieve those business objectives by removing the current roadblocks that they have. And there's a number of different ways that we can assist with that, right? So it really comes down to, and we see a lot right now with people really wanting to increase enterprise value and bring in things like recurring monthly revenue and subscription-based services to be able to really, increase that potential multiple at a sale or an exit in the future. And so everything we try to do is aligned around the business objectives of the owner or the executive team. And so we start a lot of times with an assessment of their business, and we are very data heavy in that. And so that assessment allows us to really dig into the organization, get deep, pull back the covers, if you will, and see what's going on, to be able to provide a lot of data-driven recommendations and roadmaps for them achieving their business objectives.
Yeah, love it. So, kind of zeroing in on sales specifically, when you sit down and maybe sit down with a business owner or a sales leader, and you're starting that assessment process, right? So you're kind of, for the first time, sort of pulling back the covers and kind of seeing what's underneath. What are some of the, key leverage points that you look for when you're kind of assessing a sales team? Like, some of those first things that you look for that, maybe call it low-hanging fruit, opportunities for improvement, or red flags or whatever. What are some of the first things that you're looking for as you are starting that assessment process?
Yeah, I would say one of the main things, Danny, is, do they have a playbook and a process, right? And what I find is that not only holds true a lot of times that's a gap, but it even ties into further upstream around marketing and lead development and lead generation and awareness and those kind of things. It always amazes me when we look at, because one of the factors we ask for, one of the data points we ask for is what is their percentage of their marketing spend compared to revenue, and it always amazes me how low that is.
Totally. Okay, so I got to ask you this, because I nerd out on this topic all the time. What's a benchmark that you look for? I want to hear what you say. Since I'm the marketing person, I'm going to keep my opinion to myself. What's your like sort of, what do you consider a good range there?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because it's in the industries that we're involved with, kind of complex technical sales, B2B. It really should be somewhere at a minimum of about 2% of revenue up to 5% of revenue. And what I find most of the time is it's like 0.2% to 0.5%.
Right.
And when I say that to business leaders, they honestly think I'm crazy. And I'm like, hey, look it up. That's the reality. But that's just not where a lot of companies are at.
Well, and I love that that's one of the first things you look at, because obviously marketing feeds sales, and there's a whole conversation there. But I also want to hone in on what you said a minute ago, which is this idea of a playbook. And what I heard you to mean by that is sort of like a map, a journey of what the sales process should look like, even maybe what the marketing and sales process should look like. Is that an accurate understanding? You're kind of talking about a roadmap of how somebody becomes a client?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really encompassing, this is the way we go to market, right? This is the way that we pursue new business. This is the way that once we're engaged, that we follow through that sales funnel, if you will. And so, yeah, it's exactly that. It's a roadmap, and it really provides the opportunity for, consistency across the organization. That's one thing that kind of ties to that. And I would say a lot of things tie to that is that, when we talk about, oh man, forecasting is really difficult, and I feel like our CRM and our pipeline can't be trusted, and there's all these other mitigating factors that I think really part of that root cause is that, there's not a repeatable process and roadmap for the organization to follow, but then also for management and executive team to be able to measure and assess, because it's fractured, right? And so when you have that common playbook and roadmap, it makes not only the marketing and sales aspects more successful, more strategic, but it also allows an easier time for management and executive teams to be able to really understand what's going on in the business and what's happening and what's not happening on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I love it. And John, I was mentioning to you before we started rolling here, I think a lot of our clients, not all, but a lot of our clients are still in that space where it's founder-led sales, right? Where the business owner is still doing sales. And so in probably 99% of those scenarios, there is no playbook yet, right? Because it is just the business owner. And guess what? As a business owner, you've got a pretty good instinct and you follow your gut and you maybe do things differently in situation A than situation B. And it probably works out okay because you're the owner. You kind of know what you're doing. You've got a good instinct for it. But I have seen that most founders really struggle with stepping out of that sales role and being able to put a sales leader in place. And I would argue that a big part of that is because they don't have what you just described, which is a playbook. And so something I encourage, and I'm curious if you see it this way or if you would say it any differently, is even if you are even if you're the founder, maybe you don't have a sales team, you are the sales team, you should still start building that playbook out so that you can one day step out and give somebody else like an organized, repeatable process, like rather than just, turning it over and letting them do whatever they want, because that just doesn't work out very well. Is that a fair recommendation?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're spot on there. And we see the same thing. I deal with a lot of kind of small to mid-market clients and companies. And I see that over and over again. I would say the majority of the time that we first step in, there's an owner, there's someone on the executive team that is, a lot of times carrying the majority of sales revenue, bringing that into the organization. And exactly like you said, right? I mean, they really do have a hard time. And I think it's a great insight is that, in their mind too, number one, they tend to have grown to a spot where they're like, okay, this isn't working. And a lot of times it's like, it's not working for me, right? They're tapped out. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times the owners or executives are saying, man, I really want to get this off my plate, but I just don't have the time to build what I need to transfer it. Or they've started to bring in some salespeople, but like you said, it's very fractured, haphazard. People are kind of doing their own thing. And so, I mean, that's a big issue. I think it was Jack Daly in his book, he's pretty adamant that you can't be a CEO and a sales leader, that something is going to suffer. And, depending on what you enjoy more is probably, the other is going to be the thing that suffers. And so, and so, that's where organizations like Revenuify can really help out because, we can bring a built and also for us, it's a customized playbook to their team and their company that takes a lot of that work to make that transition off of the owner, the leader's plate, and allows them to be able to just move into more of that temporary sales management support role. We do find a lot of times too that clients are saying, oh man, you guys do outsource sales management. Could you step in for a little bit and help us in that transition? We had a client out in California that, decent sized, mid-sized business. And we spent 2 years doing outsourced sales management for them, but still very connected to, the general manager of that division. But then help them find and locate the next sales manager. And, that person was able to step into a system and a process that was already functioning and succeeding and, be able to just jump right in and help the team focus on growing the business and accelerating sales instead of having to build something from scratch.
Yeah, I love it. So, okay. So once you kind of do that groundwork, you've got the playbook, you've got some SOPs and some processes figured out, then it is time to make that first hire, right? And to hire your first sales leader. I know you've done a lot of of sales leadership and hiring sales leaders and consulting on those processes. So what are some of the things, founders should think about? What are some of the things you look for when you're either yourself or you're helping a client, bring on that first sales leader? Because that's a hire you really want to get right.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of times, and I think you and I have talked about this even in the past, that people will a lot of times promote within someone that's a great salesperson and driving a lot of revenue into the organization, but they don't always necessarily make a great sales manager, right? And so what we tend to look for, number one, is that and I think most importantly, right, is that person going to be a cultural fit with the team and the organization, and that's really important. And so that's where, because we're a lot of times involved in working with those clients, we have an understanding of the team and the culture and can help, help them figure out and find that person that really works well with the team. Some sales leaders too, it depends on what you've built and what you haven't built. Some sales leaders don't want to step into a built methodology. They've got their own way and they're pretty adamant about running the business and running the team that way. And so, making sure that this person, if you do have something in place, that, they're willing to step in and continue that, and, always opportunity to help it grow and change and improve over time. But, it really comes down to that person as well being able to show evidence that, they've successfully led and grown sales teams and achieved their results. And so, that sales management role, it's really all about, developing your people, helping them work the process, holding them accountable, supporting them, helping them succeed. And so, a lot of it as well is really based on them being able to, show evidence, as I said, that they are a team builder and that they are able to come in and help make the team that you have or the team that they'll help you build successful, based on how your organization defines that. So,
how do you feel about bringing in a sales manager, but maybe the vision is eventually they're leading the team, but early on they're also just they're doing a lot of the sales themselves. So maybe there's like one person on their team, they're kind of in that player coach role. Do you see that working out, or is it tough to ask somebody to manage and also be responsible for revenue generation themselves?
Yeah, I think it is difficult. As you just mentioned, if there's one or two people on the team, yeah, maybe for a period of time that sales manager can carry a little bit of a book of business. I would say if you're bringing them from the outside and to do that, they've got to develop those accounts. Something's going to suffer. Again, it's kind of the CEO and sales leader combination. It's the same thing with sales manager, sales director, and being a quota carrying salesperson. And so, again, I think you can work initially with some pretty tight parameters and expectations if there's just a couple people on that team. But I really overall advise against it because, again, it's the same philosophy, right? That more often than not, something suffers. And if that person is incentivized toward, that sales manager is incentivized more towards revenue generation for themselves and a quota they carry, they're going to focus on that, right? We incent the behaviors that we want. And so a lot of times we're incenting the behaviors that we really don't want. And so, yeah, I think overall, if I was summing up that question, I would just say that, most of the times that doesn't work. It can work for a period of time with a smaller team, but, there really needs to be a clear exit path.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I love how you've sort of outlined this for a founder who's maybe thinking about making that first sales hire. Are there any specific like personality assessments or any of those things that you particularly recommend or lean on, or maybe you're not as big of a fan of the personality assessments? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm actually a pretty big fan of those. And there's a number of good ones out there. With Revenuify, we actually use DISC as a foundation for even our sales methodology and training, because it starts with, even from the sales side, you need to communicate with others in the way that they want to be communicated with, right? And so it's understanding how other people are wired, understanding yourself and how you're wired, and making those slight adaptations to communicate with someone. We always talk about the golden rule is, treat someone how you want to be treated. And we say, no, that's not really accurate. Treat them how they want to be treated, because how they want to be treated may not be how you want to be treated. Right. And so, we actually also use an assessment called PXT. That one's not as commonly known necessarily, but for us, we've built a ton of data from our experience from trade organizations that we're partnered with, and so that PXT assessment is really data driven around what makes a successful sales leader in this industry or that industry, what makes a successful salesperson in this industry or that industry. And the other one I really love is culture index. A lot of people also know predictive index. A little bit deeper, and we don't use that for sales training just because it's a little more complicated. DISC is an easy enough, system to be able to quickly identify someone fairly accurately. Where when you get into some of those other ones. So I always loved culture index for hiring, because it really helps you get to know that individual and how they're wired, and it's, again, a little bit deeper. So I think those things are really important to make sure that, again, that person fits with your team, that they have a good self-awareness as a leader and a manager and someone who's responsible to, lead and develop others. So I think those things can be really, really powerful.
Love it. All right. So, Jon, so I've been in the marketing space for, 16 years now. And one of the things that I've consistently seen, which I think is really unfortunate, is there's often like a battle within an organization between marketing and sales. And marketing loves to point fingers at sales, and sales loves to point fingers at marketing, and marketing says we're sending you all these leads, and we're doing this and we're doing that, and you guys aren't converting them. And then sales is like, well, you're not sending us good leads, and it really, I'm kind of like making light of it, but at the same time, it's really destructive, I think. And I'm curious your take on that. Do you see that? How do you go about addressing that?
Yeah, no, great question. For sure. I mean, we see it pretty often. And, a lot of times it, again, comes back to that there's not a defined roadmap and process for how that works, right? And, and then what ties into that is that we have so many tools available to us today, and all the technology that's available. And it always amazes me, that people aren't using a system that helps to synergize that marketing to sales transition, and even that sales back to marketing feedback, that's so important. And so, the systems that are out there today, make that a lot easier than it used to be. So it really comes down to process for me. It comes down to accountability. But a lot of times, when you dig into those scenarios, and ask the salesperson even, well, what is a qualified lead to you? And you ask, a few salesperson on that same team, you might get different answers, right? You ask, the marketing person, well, what is that sales qualified lead to you? And it's different than the sales team's expecting. And so, what's really surprising to me is how often when I'm working with clients that they have not yet figured out their ideal customer profile. And it just blows my mind, right? And a lot of them are like, if you say ICP, they're like, what is that, right? And so, a lot of times it even starts way back there to go like, okay, first we need to understand who our ideal customer is, and what, psychographic, demographic, geographic, all those things, elements make up that ideal customer, and then being able to rank existing clients and potential clients based on that, and really strategically focus your efforts. When you do that, when you start there, a lot of times that starts to help to really mitigate that conflict between marketing and sales, because we're aligned on really who we're going after, and who really fits that ICP. And that tends to then generate the right kind of leads and opportunities as well. So that's another key factor.
I love it. You're speaking my language there too, for sure. That ICP process is so important, and I love doing it with a sales team and a marketing team together in the same room, right? Yeah. Because it's like, if you do it, if you ask each team to do it separately, half the time they're going to come back with a totally different answer. And it's like, well, there's the issue right there, guys. It's like we're not speaking the same language.
Yeah.
I love that you mentioned the importance of the marketing to sales handoff is kind of what I refer to it. Like that needs to be clearly defined, but also the sales to marketing feedback loop, which is something we talk about a lot. You know, I encourage our clients, and something we do in both of our businesses, you know, internally, it is a regular marketing or sales to marketing feedback meeting. And it's everything from like, hey, let's look at the leads we generated in the last 30 days. Are they qualified? If not, like, why not? Like, what does marketing need to adjust? But then also, you know, sales are the boots on the ground. Like, they're having the conversation. So I always want sales to report back to marketing. Here's what we're running into in terms of objections. Here's what we're running into pain points. Here's what people are excited about, because that's the best marketing, like, content and messaging possible, right? Yeah. So often you get a marketing team that is off in left field, like putting out messaging and content that they think is interesting and is important to the client. And lots of the time you miss the mark, right? Yeah. Because like you're just making your best guess versus sales is actually having the conversations. So when sales informs marketing, you know, marketing gets so much sharper. The content gets better, the offers get better, the messaging gets better. So I love that you brought that up, because man, I just believe for, you know, everybody who's listening to this show, that is one of the most important meetings you should be having once a month, or, you know, potentially once a week or twice a month if, you know, if volume calls for it. But that communication is just so important in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you raised an interesting point there too, Danny, because I think Gartner recently put out a study that, you know, buyers today are, you know, like 75% of the way through that buying journey. Like, you know, when you sell technology, or you have a, you know, whether it's software, hardware technology, you know, whatever that is in that B2B world, you know, clients are able to go out today and do a lot of their own research, and they do. And so when you step in and start saying, hey, here's my product, here's my services, you know, we talk about speeds and feeds, and we talk about, you know, all these different things. You know, they a lot of times have that information, and they know about, you know, you and what you offer and what your competitors offer. And so one of the key components to that, and it ties back to what you're just saying with that feedback loop, is that, you know, we really help our clients drive toward, you know, you're there to help that client, your customer, achieve their business objectives. And so yes, you need to know your products, your services, your technology, you know, whatever that may be. But more importantly, from a sales and marketing perspective, you need to understand the business objectives of that industry or that vertical that you're selling into. You know, we talk about that you're not really selling, you know, the products and services that you provide. You're selling, improving your client's business through those products and services, right? And so when you're having those kind of conversations, when you're talking about and you show that you've done your homework and you build trust and credibility that, hey, I understand your business and the common roadblocks and objectives that you have within your business as my customer, that feedback to marketing then, and those messages related to, hey, here's business objectives that we solve, here's common, you know, issues and roadblocks that we see in this industry or this vertical, you know, that shift from marketing about, hey, here's what we do, and here's how we do it, and here's why we're amazing, and here's how long we've been here, and, you know, all those things, it changes significantly, and all of a sudden you're capturing people's attention because they're like, oh man, you're like, yeah, that's an issue for us. Yeah, that's a goal we're trying to achieve and we're struggling, right? And so that, you know, that combination of the right process and approach, it goes back to the playbook and the roadmap, you know, really can shift that feedback loop, right? And so, because I think you can have a feedback loop and still be missing the mark, you know, because you're not asking the right questions from a sales perspective and having the right conversations. And so even what you're feeding back to marketing isn't landing.
Yeah, you know? that's so good, John. This is such a good conversation. Honestly, like we're about out of time, but I feel like we're just scratching the surface. So I might have to get you back for a part 2 at some point, because this is great stuff. So John, truly a wealth of information. Tremendously appreciate you sharing it with us. I've got a final question for you, but before I ask that, for folks that want to connect with you, learn more about you, your business, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate that. So our website is Revenuify, and it's REVENUE, revenue, and then IFY at the end. So revenuify.today. And there's a lot of information there that you can, look through the site. You can follow us on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn as well under Jon Ray. And we have, a lot of things going on continually where we're offering, later today I'm doing a Prep Like a Pro AI workshop with a number of attendees, and it's live. We're taking their real customers, their real clients, and trying to talk about, hey, how can you leverage AI to prepare a lot better for your discovery meetings, for your customer conversations. Use that as a tool to help you be better prepared and save you a ton of time. And so we do a lot of really kind of cool things like that, workshops. We have, our next training course, which is called Rev Up Achiever. That's our 12-month long, full-blown sales methodology and training, is coming up here in Cornelius, North Carolina in July. And so a lot of things happening, but we always are really putting out a lot of information, just different blogs, videos, things like that I think can be really helpful to your audience. And so we just encourage people to go to the website, check that out. And there's a ton of good information on there. If you want to reach out to me, you can reach out to me at jray@revenuify.today. So same handle as the website, just JRAY at the beginning. Always glad to have a conversation and talk through people's reality with them.
Love it. Well, we'll be sure to get all of that information linked in the show notes as well. And guys, as you're listening to this, I do encourage you to check it out. So John, last question I have for you. If you could push a button, right? And what is the one thing that you wish that every founder understood about sales?
Oh, that's a great question. The one thing I wish every founder knew about sales. I would say that it is just the understanding of how critical that common methodology, process, playbook, roadmap is, not only to the success of the team, but enabling the company itself to achieve their goals and objectives. Again, that's when you talk about how many organizations have a playbook, the numbers are pretty low, and it always surprises me, but it doesn't anymore. But the way that take your company name and plug it in here, right? So-and-so way of selling, right? So-and-so way of of business development. That is so critical for not only the sanity of your team, but also to be able to so much easier manage and be on top of what's happening in the revenue generation aspect of your organization, that it's really a game changer. And so I think that's probably it, is just the critical nature of having your way of going to market, selling, marketing, and having that very clearly defined and documented.
Love it. So you heard the man, guys. As you're listening to this podcast, you want one really important action step to take. It's get to work on that playbook. I couldn't agree more. John, thank you so much for joining us on the MyMarketer Show, and we'll probably have to have you back here for a part 2. So thanks for being here.
I appreciate it, Danny. Thank you. It's great to see you and be with you again.
Thanks for listening to the MyMarketer Show. Hope this episode was helpful. Stay tuned for more great content in the future. Please be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, if you would like to add a world-class virtual marketing assistant to your team, you can get started at mymarketer.com. Mention the MyMarketer Show and we will waive the startup fee. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next time.